My name is Ed. Some of you, most of you, will know me perhaps from previous FIRE conferences and indeed earlier presentations this week. And today we have Mark in the room, which is always great. And from a presenter's point of view, it makes life really easy because Mark does so much of the talking, usually in situations like this, so fluently that I don't feel like I have to pedal too hard to keep the bicycle on the road, so to speak. And it's quite a bicycle. It's pattern computing. There is, in a moment, shortly, when you're all sitting comfortably, we're going to hear a little bit about the genesis of this extraordinary company. First of all, though, I would just like to say that Mark and I are celebrating our 5-year anniversary. In that it was about 5 years ago, wasn't it, that we first, you first told me about it. I don't think that was necessarily quite the beginning of the firm, but you first told me about how pattern computing works, what pattern discovery truly is, or at least, sorry, I'm going to withdraw that. Now, I'm not going to say what pattern discovery truly is, because I'm not sure that's a trade secret that any of us outsiders have ever fully wrapped our heads around, even if our heads were capable of having it wrapped around. But I'm going to ask Mark now to introduce himself, well, not himself, but introduce pattern computing to those of you who don't know. Mark, where did it come from, this extraordinary company, and what is the journey? What is the application? How does it work in broad terms?
Pattern computer came from an outrageous idea, which in reverse looks obvious. I guess all great ideas are like that. And the idea was that the most important work to do in solving problems would be based on pattern recognition. And beyond that, it came from a lifetime of mine working in that area, where I made the discovery that very, very, very large discoveries that we call pattern discoveries were available if, instead of shutting down and specializing, which was the trend, still is, you open up the funnel, look at much more widely at much more data, you're going to end up, if you have the right tools, making what we call pattern discoveries. And a cute way to say it is you're going to learn things you have no right to know. You're going to literally learn things about a company the CEO herself doesn't know, or something about a country that the leader of that country may not know, because you're coming in from the side, not from training at Stanford or MIT, but by looking at the patterns of the actions of that problem.
And was the inspiration then partly to do with the data sets that were being used, or the way that pattern recognition, I beg your pardon, was being targeted, focused, used, deployed at that point? Or was it to do more with a bigger, grander idea, which I guess you and I know some of the other team who you had around you in those earliest days, it was a breakout at FIRE, wasn't it? That kind of much of this stuff was coined, if you like. The first sort of template was coined. Was that where it came from?
Yes, the idea we had at FIRE at our CTO Design Challenge in 2015. So we have 10 global CTOs working on stage for a week, basically, was if you could build a pattern computer, a purpose-built computer system, bottom to top, for the one job of recognizing patterns, how would you do it? And so they went away, worked on it, came back, reported out on Friday at 11 o'clock in the morning. And for the first time ever, the FIRE audience, which are like CEOs and CTOs from around the world, gave them not one, but 2 standing ovations. And then as they filed away off to the coffee room, we were funded and staffed by the time I got my first cup of coffee. So we had an amazing response from a very, very high-end group, people who are in this room today, I think. And that was the beginning of the company. That I came to realize that they knew more than I did. They were saying, like, I want to work for this company. I said, it's not a company, it's a panel, you know? And about the third time that happened, I realized, okay, it's supposed to be a company. And then a month later, we filed for the company. Yeah.
So you became a company. We've got a lot to cover in 45 minutes, and we probably shouldn't spend too long on the 2015, 2016 stories, but
right.
You gathered around you, obviously, a bunch of very, very smart people from different disciplines, and you built a very, very high-end piece of kit to fuel and funnel all of this material. And in rapid short order, you had the funding. Well, I mean, I say short order, several months. You started to get serious funding, and the ship was sailing.
That's all true.
And what happened, and how has it evolved since? I mean, obviously, any small company. Where did you start? Where did you start? Proof of concept.
Right. So we went quiet instantly. We went into stealth mode, as they say. And for 2.5 years, we were under a different name. We hid. Even today, our name is not on our building. And so we worked very, very hard at a very high end. I think I'd say now we had the luxury of doing this, Ed. A lot of companies don't have that time, but we did. And so we were able to do what Murray Cantor, who's an IBM fellow, well known in the world, calls new mathematics. And what that means for those who don't know it is not just something a little bit better, incrementally better, but a new field of study, a new way of doing mathematics. And we had to do this in order to become demonstrably better, magnificently better at our job than anybody else. And that job, as I said, was recognizing patterns. So we had the idea that that mattered. And then we built a system top to bottom, from the operating system and all the drivers all the way up to the applications, all based on proprietary mathematics and coding that would do that work of finding new patterns in existing problems that others could not see.
I was there at one of those earlier presentations. I mean, perhaps one of the first presentation you made publicly after this machine had been built, so to speak. And you were focusing at that point, I think the biggest part of your presentation was specifically the study of breast cancer cells, right? I mean, was that where this drove from? Was that like your first proof of concept?
It was one of our first three, I would say. We worked with Larry Smarr on his microbiome, which was a terrifically hard job. 10 to the 40th possible permutations of proteins causing Crohn's disease. We think we solved that for Larry. And then I think he thinks that too. So that's good. That's why he came on stage with us. And we worked on visualizing other forms of cancer in terms of risk. And we reduced the diagnostics required for breast cancer genes from about 30 down to 6. So we brought all that on stage back in 2018. But then we did what you just said. We went seriously after a new project, and that was triple negative breast cancer. Maybe the toughest, most competitive thing in the world today. It's hard, it's in biotech, it's in cancer. It is the most competitive because it has no treatment. It's the only subclass of this killer which has no treatment, no direct treatment. So we went after that. And as you may remember, we used a public data set to do it. So we were the 2 millionth, team that had come through that data. It had been held publicly by Berkeley Labs, and we are still working on that project, I'm proud to say, today. And the reason we are is because we've now gone through 5 layers of tests and are still going positively with 2 candidates out of the 17 we designed and filed patents on. So we are very excited about that.
Just to be clear, sorry, patents for what?
So we created, I guess is a good window for others to see why we're different and how we do what we do. So when we did that project, the state of science then was people discovering 1 gene expression or 2, maybe 3, no more. And we went in, we probably saw 50 to 100 new gene expression correlations. So imagine that difference. Instead of seeing 1 star in the heavens, you see the whole sky lit up. And then we could see them more clearly enough so that we could see how tightly bound they were to each other in terms of performance. And that let us get hints at what the mechanism of the disease actually was as these genes expressed in families. And knowing that, we could then say, let's attack this at 2 different locations and stop it. And that meant 2 different drugs. And let's just pick drugs that are FDA approved ahead of time. So we built an engine to do that. And then when we're all done, let's file patents on 17 2-drug combinations, because 2 is better than 1. More likely to kill the thing and more likely to be better for the patient in the long run. And we did that, and 2 out of the 17 are still in the running.
Okay, so I'm going to summarize now as a flat earther here, and tell me when I've just made a mistake, because I'm going to try and repeat what you just said.
Okay.
Essentially, the gene correlations are showing up the way in which the cancer is spreading, or the speed with which it spreads, right? It
No.
is the mechanism with which it grows.
Yes, it is about not spreading but growing. It is about correlating with death or life in patients. And so you look at all the genes that are expressing. First of all, you have to see them. And we were able to see genes that were not being seen until then. Then, if you're lucky, you'll have a system which will also tell you how tightly related they are in action, and we could see that. And seeing that, then you could see the mechanism of the disease, if you're lucky, and we could see that apparently. And that allows you to know what to attack, which gene expressions to attack. And if you're lucky and you have built an engine for that, then you can also select what type of drugs, or approved drugs, not approved drugs, and so on patent, off patent. And so we did that.
Right, because there is a huge array, presumably, of FDA approved drugs that exist out there for all kinds of conditions,
Yes.
which might be of use, particularly in the right combination.
Yes.
And that's the key here, perhaps, in a complex illness.
Yeah, but here's the difference between us and everybody else I see out there, is that normally you would look at the FDA, family of drugs. You pick one because you have a hunch, right? Or you pick two, pick 10. But we don't do hunches. We don't do hypotheses, and we can come back to that. So we are qualitatively different in how we start. We just start with the data, no hypotheses, and then given what the data tells us, we create hypotheses.
So you've got this public source Berkeley data you talk about, which is where you began. Have you tried to expand the data sets, the inputs? I mean, particularly with the interest, no doubt, that you've attracted around this research. Have you managed to expand the inputs, the data inputs, to improve this discovery process?
Well, I think if we were a normal biotech company, the answer would be totally yes. But we are not a normal biotech company. In fact, we're not a biotech company at all. We're a compute company. So that's working in bio and other fields. So what we did instead was we were so lucky or successful, or all the above, to find good success with that first attempt at that cancer, that we created a project called Starbright last year, 2021, where we decided to go after the top 5 cancer killers all at once. And we did this for 2 reasons. We want to move the needle on all of them. We have a system that can do that. Wow, that's a gift. And it would be helpful in showing the rest of the world that we are a compute company, not a bio company. So, the real uber lesson, I guess, here for everyone inside the company and out by doing that was to prove to ourselves and to the world that this is a whole new way of doing bio. It's much faster, it's much more accurate, it's much deeper, has a higher success rate, lower risk, higher reward. Every part of it is exciting. And what better way to prove that than take the most competitive things in the world, the top 5 cancer killers, and show that you can make a difference in each one.
You talked about recognition, patent recognition, as being where you started from, what inspired your journey, and yet you talk about patent discovery now, don't you, as a kind of different field, literally a different line of attack, I suppose, at these problems. Do you have competition? Do you have competition?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
philosophically, in this area, would you say that others are now joining in this type of attack?
I have not. I think it's fair to say we have not. We have a pretty good network of people, as you know, at the national labs and elsewhere, universities. So we have a pretty good radar out there for what's out there. You could always miss something, but we have not seen anyone else doing what we're doing, meaning having built a mathematics nearly as successful in making pattern discoveries as we can. And I'll mention something that's a big surprise, I think, to the audience and was to me. When you hear someone says they're doing AI or biotech AI, about 99.5% of the time, what they really mean technically is they're using neural networks or deep neural networks, the way Google does, to do their job. And that's just not our story. We do use them, but it's a sidebar for us. And for most, that's the whole show for almost everybody else. So there's a huge difference there between our our efforts and our tools and those of other companies.
Okay, well, we've spent 15 minutes now, and I know we've got to crack on because I've got a whole list of areas that you're talking about making discoveries in, and we can go a la carte. And I'm almost going to throw to you, Mark, as where you're most excited: mining, manufacturing, aerospace, finance. Go on.
Well, I'll admit that I'm most excited about bio right now. Doing the 5 cancers all at once, and we moved the needle on 4 of them. The 5th one we're doing now because we couldn't get data for a year. We just got it in December. That was our only holdup. So I won't go through them, but they're the top 5, and they're really hard to do, and they're really every one of them we've made major steps in, with the exception of that last one, which is prostate. We'll get prostate during this quarter, I think.
What reaction are you getting from the medical community? I mean, who is rubber stamping what you're producing?
So here's how we're doing it, Ed. It's we're a little different kind of company. We have published or about to publish a paper in Medicine, but in general, we're not working to publish papers. We're working to cure disease or treat it or diagnose it or prevent it. And so we're working with the top groups in the world in those areas. So we have the top testing labs testing our breast cancer, like Charles River, we have and Berkeley labs, and we have the top partners in cancer. Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center is our partner in working on colorectal cancer, and so on. So in every story of each of these 5 cancers, there's a partner there that keeps us on the rails and helps us believe and understand that what we're doing is real. We may publish at some point, but we care much more that we actually kill the cancer cells, that we actually get into human trials and so forth. That's what we care about. How
does it work then in one of those other areas, even if you haven't made much progress? I mean, give me an example if you can.
Yeah, sure.
From, let's say, the world of industry, supply chains, manufacturing, mining, something like that.
Yeah. And I don't mean to imply we haven't made progress. You just asked where I'm excited. So I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, sure.
But as an example of something totally different, in terms of a British comedian's quote, aerospace. So we have our first customer was an aerospace, tier 1 aerospace manufacturer, and they had a big problem, and their problem had to do with failure of an assembly, a very important piece of kit that you don't want to have fail during flight. And so, and their problem was deeper because they were testing it by component, and it was fine. Passed all the tests. So they gave us their data, and we did 2 really good things. One is we were able to say to them, you need more data of this type. There are latent variables. There are missing parameters here that you're not taking or you're not sharing. And they weren't gathering them, I think. So we could come back. That's a hard thing to do mathematically, by the way. So we come back to them and say, you have stuff that you're not tracking that is key. And so they brought us some more stuff, and we said, okay, here's what we can tell you about the failures. And that was enough that they could change the course of that manufacturing problem and make it okay. So that was a really great performance, and we're now in our 3, 4, 5 negotiations for statements of work. So we're on multiple projects with them, having already signed on 2. So it's, I think that's a good example of our future with all of our big company customers. We want to solve major problems for them, and we want them to be big enough so that it's worth it to our shareholders.
How does it work? I mean, just the commercial relationship on something like that. You're not delivering exactly a fix. You're just literally delivering a fix for a fix, so to speak. You're delivering a methodology to lead to the right, as you say, data procurement that might then find the solution.
No, that's not quite true. We're actually giving them the discoveries. So in the story I just told you, we did both. But in general, we are giving them the discoveries. And so what we do is we ask for payment for the work, of course, and a piece of the action. We ask them for a small royalty for a major pattern discovery. So as an example, if you're in mining in Australia and we can increase your throughput by X%, and you make another $1 billion a year because we did that for you, we'd like a small percentage of that.
Right. So there is it's payment on delivery, so to speak, as well as the core work.
Yes.
How many are you? Tell me about the size of your company now.
It's a giant company, Ed. I think we're at about 21 right now. So we're punching above our weight, that's for sure. And we always have. As you mentioned, the original team was mind-blowingly smart, and they're still with us. And then we've added other mind-blowingly smart people of a variety of ages now. I think we called ourselves the grumpy old men startup when we started, and they're all veterans. And now we have all ages, and it's really a lot more exciting that way. But they're all brilliantly, great. They're really great.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with grumpy old men. So now listen, tell me about where next then. So you, you're making money. You are making money. You're a profit-making firm.
We're not profit-making, but we are revenue-making.
Okay. And how many different projects can you be working on simultaneously with your 21 people?
Oh, not enough. Just doing what we're doing in bio, which we've just discussed, just doing that with 21 people would be outrageous, completely outrageous. That number of people could just do one disease and you'd have more people. To do 5 cancers, that's crazy. So this whole thing is outrageous. But if you keep saying it the right way, if you say, yeah, but you're not a bio company, you're a compute company. Okay, I get it. We want to hand off these things to other companies, license to them or sell to them as we go. We don't need to take this to the final end of human trials. We don't want to do that. So the way that we look at problems is we have built this amazing system. We call them pattern discovery engines or the pattern discovery engine, a lot of parts to it. And that's what, there's the magic. And then we want to use that to provide discoveries to whether it's a university or a company, a customer. And then they're going to take those discoveries and run. So, we're not going to do the mining for you, or we're not going to replace these parts for you. We're just going to tell you which parts to replace, and you do it.
And is that how it works in those industrial settings we described, like mining or manufacturing or broader supply chains, that essentially, because there is no, I don't know, maybe there is. Is there any other one else? Is anyone else doing advanced pattern recognition around those types of really kind of human or economics-driven problems? You're going at it, and you are telling companies, literally, what are the data sets you need to start understanding the problems that you have?
It's deeper than that, because, and let me correct one slight misstatement there. Thousands of companies are doing pattern recognition. Everyone's doing it.
Sure.
But we're doing pattern discoveries. And there are not many doing that. So every company has a team now of AI related people. In general, they're using neural networks, and they're helping. They're succeeding in their own way. We consider them partners in our work with them. But it would be like what I said to you about breast cancer. When they look at their data sets, whatever number of sets they look at, they're going to see something more constrained than what we can see. And their discoveries will be more incremental by far. And so instead of finding one gene, we'll find 50 or 100. Instead of finding part of a solution, we'll find 5 solutions. So we just can see more deeply and more powerfully. If it were a microscope or a telescope, it would be a good metaphor than others are seeing right now.
But in those settings, the industrial settings, let's say, the supply chain settings, the variable might be just human behavior, right?
Yes. Matter of fact, absolutely.
So applying a scientific kind of, it's not an entirely predictable thing, let's be honest, human behavior. Right. So how do you deploy? If you come up with 5 solutions, perhaps there could be 5 rival solutions where they literally just need to be tested one after the other, don't they?
Well, I have to be careful how far I go on this, but let me suggest that if you were a new customer of ours and you had a manufacturing problem, of course, people are involved as well as machines, and we don't care, and the system doesn't necessarily even know. And so, again, there are no hypotheses here. You just give us all your data. Where did the failure occur? When did it occur? How did it occur? And if we have the failure data, we'll come back to you and say, there's something funny about station 7. And it was only between December and March. Now you'll have to tell us, what does that mean to you? And you may say, oh, well, that was when we were using temp workers at that station. Yes, we shouldn't do that anymore. I'm making this up, by the way. But you'll have the ability to know as our customer what correlates with what we're telling you whether it's human, whether it's machine, that kind of thing. If it's machine, we can tell you what's going on. But if there's a human factor there, you'll know what's going on. And we did have a situation where that exact thing was involved, and they could therefore solve the problem.
So how are people reacting to what you're doing? I mean, let's return to the cancer example. The world of, I mean, it's an incredibly advanced scientific field, no doubt. There are who knows how many very smart people around the world devoting vast billions of dollars to research in this area, and you turn up with your big clever computer and perhaps hardly a kind of a medical degree certificate between you, because that's not your field, or maybe you do. But by
on our advisory board, we have many. But yes, that's right.
But by and large, yeah, your expertise is in astrophysics and computer science and other areas, or typically it is, because that's, as you're saying, that's your line of attack. So how are they reacting?
Let me make sure you understand that we have the best advisory board, in my humble opinion, in the world, and they include. We call them the three tenors, but the three best guys in genetics in the world. So, we have a lot of advice in real time from very, very smart people in each of the areas where we're engaged.
So are you, so therefore, I mean, listen, I'm not challenging your expertise or indeed the ability, because the very nature of your disruptive approach here has been successful because it's different from conventional medicine, right? I mean, that's the point. So, so what has the reaction been?
I'll give you an example. I think this is okay to do. So we are in discussions with the City of Hope, which is a very famous cancer center. And we're looking forward to doing work with them and so on. And we brought one of their top people into the tent. We NDA'd that scientist, that doctor, and we showed him what we had done with one of our breast cancer candidates. And he then, in a meeting, turned to his whole team and explained to them, without violating the NDA, what we had done. And he said, when they explained it to me, it made perfect sense, but I never would have thought of it myself. I love that. I kind of love that. So here's a guy who's spent his whole life on breast cancer, and that's what he said. And that's exactly what we would expect someone to say who's a partner of ours or a customer. So I think that's the reception we're getting. In that particular situation, Merck had just spent $5 billion in cash during that calendar year trying to go after this thing. And we didn't. We didn't have that much money, but we did pretty well that year.
Do you have the likes of Merck and Pfizer sniffing around you?
Probably. I haven't called it myself.
Yeah. How are Wall Street reacting to all of this?
We're not public. And so if you mean investors, really well. So we've raised a lot of money from investors. Some of them are famous, some of them are small angels. And we, as you may remember, we started out at a family friends valuation of $3 million. And that's gone up by thousands of percent now. So we went from 3 to 10 to 25 to 50 to 195 million. Now we're at 1.2 billion. And we've gotten strong support at every price. So the investment community loves our milestones. That's how I'd put it. Our achievements are driving their enthusiasm and our valuation.
And what are your milestones now? And what's your short to medium term plan in purely financial terms? So,
Starbright was one, moving the needle on the top 5 cancers. That was one milestone for us, or 5 milestones. And then I didn't mention this, Ed, but since I've talked to you last, we have a new project, which was called Sunset Island. We always use island name for some reason. And now it's called Spectral. It is the most accurate, the fastest, and the cheapest high throughput COVID detection system on the planet. So there are 400 competitors we're tracking. This is a very busy area. It's kind of like being in breast cancer. And it works. It's really cool. We're going into production now. We're looking to launch in 5 countries. We have little white sheets we can send you with pictures of it. We'll talk about it this afternoon in our 5 to 6 p.m. meeting for investors and the public. And it's amazing. And we have 98.5% balanced accuracy. It's a 3-second test, no chemicals, no reagents, very little cost. We were talking about single-digit dollars here for a test, and it can be mobile. You can put it at an NFL stadium or a hospital gate, or any GM, General Motors, or the British National Health Service, wherever you want to go. And the thing works well. It's just amazing. And we're doing something a bit unusual, of course. And the secret sauce is at the back end of it is our pattern discovery engine, looking at the fingerprint of this disease. So I'm really excited about that. The whole team's excited about it.
It's a test that won't get up your nose, to make a gag about it. But I mean, it's spit based or what?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
2 drops of spit, which is much more fun than going up your nose or getting blood draws.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal for us, and I'm excited about that. And then we've got this other big thing, which we're doing the big reveal of, again, this afternoon at 5 o'clock. Anyone who wants to get invited, send Scott at Strat News a request, and he'll get you in. It's XAI. So a little pre-announcement here for your benefit, Ed. But I think it's fair to say there probably are several holy grails now in artificial intelligence, or what I like to call advanced mathematics. And the biggest one might be the black box problem, or the inability to explain how the system did what it did. It is the holy grail, and you'll hear Ben Brown say this today from the Berkeley Labs. We can do it. We can do it.
Sorry, you can do it with regard to any black box in any context.
As far as I know, this as far as we know today, could be wrong. It not only works with our own mathematics, it works with neural networks, which is the big deal. For our customers, the big deal was being able to do it with our own math. For the customers who use neural networks, now this is a big deal.
So effectively, you're saying you reverse engineer the mathematics, whatever it was in whatever AI application, to reveal the process.
I wouldn't call it that. I wouldn't call it reverse engineering, because we don't do that. In fact, we could do something a little bit like that by knowing the outputs before we did this work. This was a top secret project with us for 2.5, 3 years. What we're doing with this particular bit of kit, I love the way you put that, is we can show you, and we will this afternoon, we can show you how the internals are working.
Right.
Which then means you can see the how and why of how that system refused you a credit app or a loan application or whatever you're trying to get out of the European government.
So in terms of the companies coming to you, the areas you're coming to you, you've talked about the medical community, those that you're working with. How many different areas of industry do you work on simultaneously, given the limitations of your size?
Right. Given that our team should be 5,000 instead of 21.
Yeah.
So there's kind of today and tomorrow, right? I mean, today we are focused on what we're talking about right now. So we're looking at mining and resources. We're looking at manufacturing. We're doing a lot of work in the COVID world and in that system and in bio. That's pretty much our world right there. We're starting to do some finance things. If you said, in 5 years, where are you? I picture it as a bit of a visual metaphor. We may actually be virtual for the rest of our lives. It's a little unclear right now, but virtual is not bad in certain ways. We probably do both, probably hybrid, but I can see us being quite virtual in that hybrid world. And if it were not virtual, if it were a campus like in the old Microsoft days, what I would picture would be this classy, beautiful central thing, which does all of the mathematics that are just beyond anyone's understanding, even our own at times. And then, all the coding, the central coding, all the engineering, all the hardest stuff, the drivers, the new chip. We don't do chips, we do multiple chips. So how do we manage that? So all that really hard stuff would be in the center building in this virtual community. And then we'd have satellite buildings in this virtual community. And one would be pattern bio. And one would be pattern industrials, one would be pattern finance. I think we'd have an other. And let's see, resources. We'd probably have resources. So mining, services for resources. So we know it's very important for the world to make steel. So we don't work for anybody who digs coal, but we do work for somebody or about to who digs iron. That's a good thing for the planet. So, we try to make qualitative decisions, not just quantitative decisions about our work. And we have a pretty good way of assessing things. We're going to help a company that does gas production, but not coal. And the reason is we did a very deep dive at Fire, you may remember, on how to solve climate change. And we actually beat the expert from Caltech by the CTO challenge, knowing that if you take 20 years as a transition time, and you replace all the coal plants in the world with gas, with natural gas, that's your transition. You're buying the A-team time. You're buying the planet time. Get off of the damn coal and then shut all those down, and then you go 100% renewables. And that was the only way that we saw and that he saw for really surviving at a 1.5 or 2.0 degree change. So we understand what we're doing, and we try to make these qualitative decisions that benefit the planet and that are big movers, not little movers.
I want to see your campus on a little island somewhere off the Pacific Northwest. I guess there won't be a campus. I mean, your plan is not to ever be public?
Oh, I didn't say that. It may end up being that our daughters go public before we do. There may be a path to liquidity where we spin out satellites like Pattern Bio, and it does a liquidity event before the mothership does. We haven't decided that. We have a lot of companies after us that are SPAC companies right now, and that's a public path if you want to take it, not in great favor. There are a lot of people interested in Pattern Computer. So my attitude has been do the work and do a great job demonstrating that we can do things no other company can do in very, very hard, very, very high value problem sets. And the rest will come right along.
You isolated medicine and industry, two areas obviously where that's where the money is right now. Do you foresee, I mean, based on all of these brilliant conversations we've had over the years in various FIRE conferences around all kinds of issues of climate or other areas of medicine and science, do you see yourself being I don't know, incorporated into the academic community to work in there too? I don't know, that could happen.
In a sense, we already are. Because we have these these very cool things that we built into the original org chart of the company. And we call them internal think tanks. So if you pictured us right now as 21 people, and then we have contractors that are around them, we have the advisory board that's around them, we have other people around them, and then we have these internal think tanks. And those are circles inside the circle that break the edge of that circle, right? So half outside, half inside. And the insiders are our staff, but the outsiders are people from the national laboratories or universities. And so we're already doing that. And those groups meet every week. So we've built that into the day-to-day operation of the company so that a lot of reasons, right? It's fun for the staff. It's fun for the outside guys because they see bleeding edge stuff that we're doing under NDA. And then it's also fun for investors because we make sure that we're doing the right thing. We're not doing the wrong thing. We're not off on some wild goose chase. And it also means that we are immediately part of that environment you're asking about in real time. So in real time, we're part of the Department of Energy. We're part of Berkeley Labs. We're part of Los Alamos Labs. We're about to start working with Sandia. We're doing some stuff with other national laboratories and working with UCSD. We've got a laboratory we're starting now down at UCSD. We've got a new office, satellite office in San Diego, where we're putting up a mathematical study team, research team for making pattern discoveries. We've got people in other places, Vancouver, BC, and Maryland. And so, it's really exciting because the fuzziness of the edges in those constructed relationships with the academic community and the national labs allow us to be living in both worlds and bring the best both ways.
And is the fuzziness there being? I mean, how does the relationship work? Are people coming to you saying, kind of, apply the machine to this, or are you
Yes.
spitting ideas out, saying to various faculties in different places, listen, this is an area you should be thinking about?
Well, more the first than the second. Our investors will be happy to hear.
Yeah.
But I think both happen. I'll give you a pretty good example. Well, the COVID thing was a suggestion from Berkeley to us, based on the way that it works, the technology. And we were sitting around wondering when it would apply, and then bang, COVID showed up. So we were ready to go, in a sense, when that happened. We have one that's still on the shelf I'll tell you about, but it's very cool, and I'd like to do it. There's some British people you could help me recruit that are good at this. But it turns out, can do new materials. And there is a type of material called perovskites, which are interesting, tricky to work with, and full of promise. And they are very important in creating modern solar cells. And we have shown already that probably we can do better than anyone in the world, I think, at displaying. Literally, we have a visualization we can share with you right now if we did it. What are all the possible ways to make these complex compounds, period, and which ones are buildable or not, and what characteristics will they have that you would want? Pretty interesting. And when you look at the visualization, you actually see the quantumization of the molecules in the visualization, which I had never seen before. It's like, wow, what are those stripes? Oh, those are like rings of electrons. So, it's a pretty amazing experience to do that theoretical computational build. And it turns out, according to some British people at Oxford, who I trust, that this may be the key to doubling the efficiency of solar cells. So we'd love to work with them or somebody like them to do that work. We think we can do the back-end computational work better than anybody else on the planet. And that would be
these are synthetic materials you could create to improve photovoltaics by a factor of 2, you think, or more.
Yes. Gentlemen, I just want to cut in briefly here and say that we'll be entering Q&A in 5 minutes. It's actually about 3 minutes now. Sorry, I was waiting for you to finish. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat, and we will call on you during the Q&A session.
Yeah, I can see the questions backing up, actually. And, if and when we're ready, Mark, look, if we've covered it, we can go straight to questions now, because I reckon there's probably a whole army of them, and we'll end up being grumpy, or some people will, that we've left them behind. And they were question number 15, and we only got to 12. So, listen,
sure.
If people want to dive in, it's been brilliant talking to you. I'm going to be, obviously, I'm not going anywhere, but if others want to start asking questions, let's shoot.
Could I if I were to be so arrogant as to say, Ed, we're going to ask me one more question, it might be something like, what's your dream here?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I thought you'd given me your dream, which was actually suitably withdrawn and coy on your part when I asked you if you were going to go public and change the world. But I sense, go for it, Mark. Come on, tell me. You're going to, what is it? I'm
hoping, as you know, I think Elon is a friend of mine, and he's been to fire 5 times. I think he's amazing. He's a great guy. He's maybe the only person I'd point to, one of the few. If you have kids, we'd say, you know what? There is somebody who's pretty cool who cares about humanity in tech. I would hope, this is my wish, that what Elon has done for engineering, which is how he sees himself, that we could do for knowledge.
Wow. That is something. Are you going to get that done, Mark?
We're working on it. Yeah.
All right. I feel like that's a good moment to switch over to Q&A. And for those of you worrying about fairness right now, I just want you all to know that I'm going to pull up Michael Hochberg, who did actually ask the first question, but direct messaged me, and I'm not sure it was on purpose. So I'm not skipping anybody over. Michael, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. So Mark, I thanks for taking questions here. I was just curious when you refer to what you've built as a piece of kit, as you probably remember from our previous conversations. I'm a knuckle dragging hardware guy, and I'm just curious how much of this solution is novel hardware, how much of it is new mathematics, how much of it is operating systems. Like what's the mix of novelty here?
So first of all, nice to see you. I think the most important thing to say is the integration of all of this is what matters. And so right from the beginning design drawings, it was the whole thing. And the only thing that was not part of this was chips. We don't want to get involved in making chips.
Got it.
We will run them differently than anybody else. We just don't make them. And what we do have is a heterogeneous chip architecture. So every time a new chip like Cerebras or whatever shows up, if we like it, we can plug it in. And that even includes quantum computing. We just turn a quantum computer into a coprocessor in our system. So we love that design because it's not bounded by anything. And then every level above that, Michael, is proprietary. So we wrote the drivers for all the chips. We wrote the Linux operating system to be extremely thin and to be compatible with what we needed in terms of security and drivers. And then on top of that, the management of all those chips and all the libraries of how those chips work, we wrote that. And on top of that, everything else. So the entire stack is proprietary. And it's focused on this one job of finding patterns.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah,
So the next question is from Rennie. Rennie, are you here? Rennie Gleason.
Yep. Hey there, Evan.
Yep.
Hi.
Do you want me to? Wow. I wanted to hear your beautiful tones as you reread it. Really, the quick question was, what do you see as the mix, Mark, between the analysis of hard data sets, quantitative, meaningful, raw, or otherwise data sets, and the more soft data sets of how innovation and discoveries actually work their way through the soft human tissue of a corporate organization?
I did not pay this man $5 to ask that question because you're giving me a softball going right into the next hour, which is all about that question. And,
I'm so sorry.
No, it's good. So if you guys hang on for the next hour, we'll talk about pattern discovery, its relationship to innovation, and how you can bring it to your own team.
And with that, I'll go back on mute.
All right. Okay.
All right. Shameless plugging for the next session, which should be great. So everyone, don't forget to join us for the workshop coming up. Bob Warshauer, you had a question about the kind of process and how it could be applied to money. Do you want to come up and join us?
Yeah. Hello, Mark.
Hey, Bob.
You talk in your SNS letters a lot about money flows around the world. Probably no one would pay you for it, but out of curiosity, have you turned this pattern recognition machine on money flows?
No,
or considered it?
Yes, we have. And we were in negotiations with a bank that I will not name, and they wanted us to work on money flows. And we looked 3 times at what they might be using that for, and we fired them as a customer. And you, by your face, I can tell you know which bank it was. So we didn't want to get involved in laundering, and we didn't get involved.
But as an academic exercise, it seems not an academic, as a societal exercise at some point, it seems like a good idea.
It is. I just try to, you're one of our investors. I try to honor investors by not doing every possible thing we can do, but kind of staying with things which might bring a reward for you guys too. So yeah, yes. It's a great idea. Yeah. Okay, Evan.
All right. The next question is from Mark Prensky. Mark, do you want to come up and join us?
If you can hear me.
Yeah.
It's basically, I think, been answered. I'm just going to say yay pattern. It's really wonderful to be here. But the issue that came up in many years ago was that you could have the right answer and that it wouldn't go anywhere. And so what happened was that Romney and Baines spun off from BCG because they wanted to do not only the thing, but the implementation. So the question is, will others be able to do what we do and implement? And is that an opportunity for us, or is it a risk for us?
Well, so two parts to that question, I think. In terms of the creation of the discoveries, I hope we will always be ahead of the pack, period. We have about a 3 to 5 year, I figure, jump. And when I think you probably know this, Mark, but working on new mathematics for, say, 3 years, well, now it's been 5 years, 6 years, that's not something that normal companies allow. IBM didn't even do it. So I think that that's a meaningful thing in terms of a competitive moat for us. But if you're talking about implementation side, we want everyone to implement all these discoveries. And I think that's not a competitive situation. That's a cooperative. It's not a competitive thing at all. We would want to have others take our discoveries, pay us a licensing fee, and run like crazy. So, make billions on it. So we're enablers, not competitors.
And the issue before was that they couldn't.
Yeah.
And so they needed additional assistance in literally putting people into their companies, which is what Bain did, to say, we'll do it for you in your company.
In our case, we just work with their systems experts,
Yeah.
and we hand over the discoveries, and they can go with it.
Okay. Can is the operative word there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they will. Yeah, they are already.
Well,
The next-
hopefully, yes.
Next question is from Sharon Baker. Sharon, are you with us?
Or what's the question?
Yeah, the question is, when might the public, there she is.
Either way, Evan, you can read it. Of course, I have a million questions, but I've been trying to write about Mark and his wonderful discoveries for 7 years now. So Mark, when will we actually, the public, kind of see a tangible result from all of your partnerships?
Well, I think, I can't tell you who the public is. That's kind of a misleading question. But if you said, when are these things publicly known, they're already. So I'll give you a really big example, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. We just made a major discovery in what's called Explainable AI. Now, we wrote a paper with 35 co-authors from the national laboratories, which is a publicly available paper. Went up about a month ago, and you can get it off our website. That paper explained what would happen in science and in business problem solutions if you could do this. So that description of the impacts upon science and problem solving is public. And now today, we will make public the actual having solved it. And we'll give examples. And all this will be publicly available after today. So we've been quite public about our breast cancer discoveries. We've been quite public about the other progress we've made in bio. We've been very public about the COVID detection system. So we try to keep telling people, but we haven't been loud. And that may be what you're saying. We need to be louder, but we've been as public as we can be.
So when might we see something like just from the COVID testing? When might that be able to, I don't know if you can share with us, is that a year away? Is that something that would happen this year?
Well, we are now in production. So in one sense, we're getting as ready as we can. We have done a lot of testing. We're almost finished with testing. That'll probably be another month. But we also have more testing at the request of each government. And that's a long story. So the FDA or the FDA version of India or of Australia or of Chile, Germany, I'm not going to predict that. But I can tell you that we'll be publicly talking about our system during that period, for sure. And we'll be having partnerships made in each country, which we're already doing. And we'll be working in hospitals in each country, doing trials and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
think-
Follow-up question, if I may.
I was going to tell you that.
I'm going to go to one more because we do have a question hanging from David Brin, and we are almost out of time.
All right, fine.
Thank you. Thanks, Sharon.
But Sharon, you can probably continue to discuss some of these things in the workshop coming up next. So don't miss it. David
Or just
Brent.
reach out, Sharon.
Yeah. David,
there are some ways to do some pattern recognition that imitate biology and physics, including, for instance, doing Fourier transforms, instant Fourier transforms optically using lenses. It seems to me that pattern computing would be an excellent way to incorporate a lot of analog systems and, quite frankly, biological, actual biological, as opposed to misnamed neural network type systems. And I wonder if you guys have been looking in on that. Also, perovskites. I had them in Earth in 1989. They make up most of the planet.
We need a T-shirt for perovskites.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the dream of applying compute successfully to solving problems in physics is a long-held dream, and hasn't been very successful yet. But I think we can do that, David. We have not done it. As you'll appreciate, I guess, I would hope, we have these layers of understanding that we've worked on at FIRE that range from pattern discoveries through flow and interaction and complexity mathematics, chaos theory, and all these things which we've managed to tie together. And by the way, behind the scenes, which we continue to work on daily almost. So literally, I mean, you and I could offline have a great conversation about the second law, Heisenberg's uncertainty mathematics, and flow and interaction. And
we're going to have a conversation like that Thursday.
We are. Yeah, that's right. So anyhow, that can be done. And I look forward to doing it. We're not quite at that stage, but having XAI will certainly bring us much closer.
Well, on that note, thank you, everyone. That was an excellent set of questions. Great panel. Thank you, Mark.